highest levels, not the rank and file of the FBI and DOJ. Plus, you will not believe, you're not going to believe who James Comey hired to be his lawyer. That and so much more. Breaking news, the Department of Justice is urging the House Intelligence Committee Chair, Devin Nunes, not to release the classified memo exposing FISA abuses against the Trump campaign. Well, that is unacceptable to us, and it is why we are still demanding that Congress release the memo. Tell us the truth. That and more in our very important opening monologue. All right, our exclusive reporting on the DOJ. We can report right now that the missing FBI text messages, we'll tell you about it in a second. This is a game-changing development. But first, President Trump is letting the special counsel, Robert Mueller, know that there is no collusion and he has nothing to hide. Listen to this.
Going to talk to Mueller? I'm looking forward to it, actually.
Do you have a date set?
Here's the story, just so you understand. There's been no collusion whatsoever. There's no obstruction whatsoever. And I'm looking forward to it. I would love to do it.
Was your in person?
You know, again, I have to say, subject to my lawyers and all of that.
All right, with his lawyer's approval, that makes sense, but is that the smart play? Sounds like game on to me. The Drudge Report tonight has this headline up, and it sums it up perfectly. Trump stares down Mueller. I'll do it under oath. Now, Judge Jeanine Pirro, she'll join us later with legal reaction. Now, also tonight, the walls are closing in on those responsible for this massive corruption, abuse of power at the top levels of government in what we are now calling state-sponsored sabotage. Now, with this flood of damning news exposing all this malfeasance, the special counsel Robert Mueller and his spokespeople in the media are now working overtime. They want to create as many distractions as possible and discredit anybody that's telling the truth, like us here on the Fox News channel, for daring to report on the truth. Now, to be perfectly clear, for those that don't pay attention and want to advance lies and false narratives, we are not and never have been and never will be talking about rank and file members of the FBI, the DOJ, and the intelligence community. They honor us with their service every day. And there's no show on television that has and will continue to support these hardworking people that do such a service to their country. But the criminal wrongdoing that we are exposing has to do with only a few select Obama administration top bureaucrats who thought that they knew better than you did about who should be your president. Now, the liberal media is engaged in a total smear campaign. They want to shut up people like me and Greg Jarrett and Sarah Carter and John Solomon and Tom Fitton and Victoria Tunsing and so many others. They want to conceal the truth. Now, we've always had the utmost respect for the FBI. I've had family in the FBI and the intelligence community and police officers and firefighters and the military. Now, can the liberal media say the same for themselves? We know the answer. How many times have you heard them attack people in uniform, those that serve us as much as they do? Now that we're getting closer and closer every single night in uncovering this huge, historic, massive scandal, the media is rushing to slander and discredit those of us that are exposing this. At the end of the day, every one of these so-called journalists at these so-called news networks are going to look like fools that we already know that they are. The same people who have been clinging to a sinking lifeboat of this phony Trump-Russia collusion story. It's been a year, and they still cannot admit they've been completely wrong. There's no evidence, and in many instances, they're flat out lying. And now, since none of this has worked, well, the media is now doing the bidding of Robert Mueller, their breathless, hysterical reporting about what the special counsel is doing. Don't believe me? Let your own eyes see.
A dizzying 24 hours in the Russia investigation, no longer just inching toward the president. This morning, it is more like careening.
Happening now, breaking news closing in. The special counsel's Russia probe closes in on the president and his inner circle. After 24 hours of bombshell reports and developments, another one. Just in, CNN has now learned that the special counsel, Robert Mueller, wants to question the president's former White House chief strategist, Steve Bannon.
The outline of an obstruction of justice case filling in bit by bit. As NBC's First Read political team notes, if the optics around Bill Clinton's tarmac meeting with Loretta Lynch were bad, this is, quote, 100 times worse.
It was a day of revelations in the Russia probe.
If there's any day to be watching Ari, it is today. Russia, Russia, Russia.
A lot going on.
Now, have you noticed anytime there's big breaking news about this massive government abuse of power that that's unfolding every night on this show, all of a sudden 3 or 4 stories about the special counsel's investigation in the media, they're all over the place, and it spreads like wildfire within their own echo chamber. So predictable at this point. The media is out of control with their bias. It's painfully obvious. And by the way, a lot of their information, I believe, when all is said and done, is probably coming from Robert Mueller and, of course, his liberal Democratic hacks that have been pushing this themselves. Now, also tonight, big developments about the explosive classified memo exposing FISA abuses against the Trump campaign. Fox News is reporting the Department of Justice is now asking the House Intelligence Committee Chairman, Devin Nunes, to not publicly release the memo that we deserve. Now, do the DOJ, do they not understand? Congress has oversight over them. They're investigating them. They don't have to hand the memo over to anybody in spite of what the liberal media says. They shouldn't do it. Now, this is why we are once again calling on you, the American people, to call up your members of Congress, demand the memo be released. Release the memo. Hashtag release the memo. Call the number on your screen, 202-224-3121. Tell Congress the truth about one of the biggest scandals in American history, and we have a right to know. Also breaking this hour, this is huge. New information about the missing Strzok Page text messages. Remember, 5 months, a very critical time period. Sources are exclusively telling me tonight, multiple sources, that the Department of Justice is, as we speak, in the process of successfully recovering many of those text messages in that 5-month period of time from the Trump-hating FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. The DOJ is also trying to track down their mobile phones. This is huge because those texts are during that critical time during the so-called Russia investigation. Here's a big question tonight. Was the deputy FBI director, Andrew McCabe's cell phone impacted by this so-called glitch? McCabe, he was Lisa Page's boss, and both she and Strzok talked about, quote, the insurance policy in Andy's office. We believe that was McCabe. And also brand new tonight, we have new revelations about one of the lawyers that is now representing disgraced former FBI director, soon to be probably investigated, national embarrassment, James Comey. According to BuzzFeed, one of Comey's attorneys turns out is his Columbia law professor buddy, the guy he leaked a memo to the New York Times because he wanted a special counsel appointed, which turned out to be, Comey's other BFF, Robert Mueller. You can't make this up in a spy novel. It's one giant incestuous circle of corruption. And we have even more proof. James Comey testified, remember, that he gave his classified memos to Robert Mueller. And according to the reports, the special counsel interviewed Comey about his memos last year. By the way, they also collaborated before he testified. Those memos contained classified information. They were created on government computers. So Comey broke the law by removing them from the FBI. But it's clear that Mueller didn't care about any of that, because they're best friends. Mueller's main focus is and has been and continues to be carrying out a witch hunt to unseat a duly elected president of the United States, President Trump. It's ridiculous, and it's an abomination to our Constitution and the rule of law. And as you have seen by watching the show the past couple of nights, well, there have been so much breaking news about the FBI text messages that we've been able to cover all of this. I want to go back, and I want to make sure you're up to speed, highlight a couple of very important pieces of information. Now, remember, Senator Ron Johnson revealing with Bret Baier last night that an informant told him that there was some sort of anti-Trump, quote, secret society within the FBI. Here's Senator Johnson explaining it on Special Report. Take a look.
What this is all about is further evidence of corruption, more than bias, but corruption at the highest levels of the FBI and that secret society. We have an informant that's talking about a group that were holding secret meetings off-site. There's so much smoke here. There's so much suspicion.
Let's stop there. A secret society, secret meetings off-site of the Justice Department.
Correct.
And you have an informant saying that?
Yes.
Is there anything more about that?
No, we have to dig into it. This is not a distraction. Again, this is bias, potentially corruption at the highest levels of the FBI.
Really? Secret societies? You can't make this stuff up. ABC News, they have obtained this particular text message, and they're actually questioning if it was all a joke. We'll let you decide. Lisa Page, writing Peter Strzok, are you even going to give out your calendars? Seems kind of depressing. Maybe it should just be the first meeting of the secret society. Senator Johnson is saying that he's trying to get to the bottom of it, as he should. And Senator Johnson is also making news by releasing text messages from anti-Trump FBI lovers, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, that also highlight even further their extreme bias. Now, just after midnight on May 19th, remember, it was gone from December 14th to the 16th of May. And then Mueller was appointed, and all of a sudden they started reappearing again. But Strzok appears to be talking about getting an offer to join Mueller's investigation. This is key. And by the way, writes here, Strzok, my answer is no, no. In the lead division, and then I think, wait, a case will be in the history books? A chapter? Much like you tell me about my extra time in the field and all the cases, would you trade it? 1 million people sit in odd staff jobs. I didn't quite get that. This is a chance to do, well, it may be the most important case of our lives. By the way, the same guy that was saying earlier, there's no there. 30 minutes later, Strzok asked Page the question, an investigation leading to impeachment? So did Strzok have inside knowledge about what Robert Mueller's end goal was going to be? Because that statement from Strzok contradicts what he said when he was talking about the possibility of Trump-Russia collusion on May 19th, 2 days after Mueller was appointed. You may remember the time frame. He says, you and I both know the odds are nothing. And if I thought it was likely, I'd be there, meeting with Mueller, no question. I hesitate in part because of my gut sense and concern. There's no big there. Why would I want to do that? So Strzok, despite his rampant bias, knew from the beginning Mueller was leading a witch hunt. And Strzok would know because he was the top intelligence official at the FBI, and he's the guy that signed the papers that started the entire Russian investigation. Now, Strzok also dropped this bombshell about the Clinton email investigation, writing, for me, and this case, I personally have a sense of unfinished business. I unleashed it with the mid-year exam, his MIE, which was the FBI's code name for the Clinton investigation. Now I need to fix it and finish it. Fix it and finish it. Strzok is texting this May 19th. Remember, when we know Hillary Clinton wasn't even interviewed till the 4th of July weekend about her email server scandal on the 4th of July. Now, remember, it's at this point that Strzok and Comey and others were drafting the exoneration on May the 2nd, before they talked to Clinton, interviewed Clinton, and 17 other key witnesses. And Strzok and Page, well, they suggest in text on July 1st, just 4 days before Comey's announcement, 3 days before they interview Hillary, about Clinton, that both of them and the former Attorney General Loretta Lynch all knew that Clinton wouldn't be prosecuted. It's smoking gun evidence. What more would you need? Strzok, Comey, Loretta Lynch, they all knew the fix was in, it was rigged. Let me connect the dots for you. So you got deep state actors. You got these people, top people at the FBI, Strzok, Page, Comey, and then at the DOJ, the AG, Loretta Lynch, and of course, Andrew McCabe, shielding Hillary Clinton from prosecution, even though it is obvious, incontrovertible, she committed felonies and broke the law, because they wanted her to stay in the race and defeat in the election Donald Trump. Now, remember, language in the exoneration statement was changed from what was breaking the law, the legal standard, gross negligence, to extreme carelessness. And then you had Hillary Clinton shelling out, over $12 million for an unverified, salacious dossier with Russian propaganda and lies because she wanted to rig the general election against Trump. After all, she's the same woman that rigged the primaries, according to Donna Brazile, against Bernie Sanders. And on top of that, as a backup, Obama deep state officials, they used this fabricated dossier to obtain a FISA warrant. In other words, the Hillary bought and paid for phony Russian dossier to spy on an opposition candidate, Donald Trump, in an election year, and then as a president-elect. Talk about Watergate. This is Watergate on steroids and human growth hormone. The constitutional violations are severe and historically unprecedented in this country. You have deep state actors using and abusing the powerful tools of intelligence that we give them to protect this country. and covering up Hillary Clinton's crime because they wanted her to stay in the race, not be indicted, because they thought they knew better than you who should be the president. And more importantly, they thought they would never get caught. They never thought Clinton was going to lose. Now, tonight, it is time for the Attorney General. By the way, good job at the DOJ tonight by actually finding and now recovering some of the missing 5 months of text messages. But the Attorney General Sessions, and he needs to, I would argue tonight, appoint a second special counsel. Why? To investigate and prosecute every single person that we are talking about involved in this. Here with reaction, former chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor, investigative reporter Sarah Carter, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. All right, Sarah, let's go. You have broken some of this news tonight. You heard at the beginning that the DOJ, as we speak, are recovering the missing 5 months. That is huge tonight.
It's huge news, and it fits with what other FBI agents were telling me, former and current, where they said, look, they can get these text messages. There is no way there was a technical glitch that got rid of all these text messages. Look, the FBI are experts at going after criminals who try to hide their text messages, and they're able to get them from them. So if they have the phones, they can get it from that. And if they're in the server, they can get it from that. Now the question is, why did they respond that way? Why did they respond with this technical glitch? And I have some new news, Sean. I have been told by members in Congress that they will release that memo, that they will not be cowing down. They're not going to be bullied. They're not going to be bullied by the DOJ. They want this memo out to the public, and they will go to a vote on this.
Okay, Greg Jarrett, let's talk about, first of all, this is big news about the release of this, but we take it even a step further. I mean, you see more texts from Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. What are your thoughts?
50,000 texts. If you extrapolate that, that's 68 texts a day. Did these two cheating lovebirds, who are still married to other people at the time, have any opportunity to actually do their jobs at the FBI? It appears abundantly clear that they harbored an anti-Trump animus and a unabashed adoration for Hillary Clinton, that it influenced their decisions, and they were involved in clearing Hillary Clinton and launching an investigation against a political candidate, Donald Trump, and then using a false document to spy on him, which is an abuse of power. It's a felony crime, 10 years punishable behind bars. And now you've got the DOJ trying to cover up the 4-page intel memo. As Nixon once famously said, it's not the crime, it's the cover-up. Well, with these guys, it's both crimes and cover-up.
Let's go to this new development. Sarah, you caught this, and it was in your article tonight on sarahcarter.com. But Jason Chaffetz, the idea that, well, if the investigation leads to impeachment, there's no there. I hate the president. He, F him. But if I can get rid of him, and this will make history, well, maybe I should get involved. What do you think, sweetheart? Pretty much what he's saying to his lover.
Look, Sean, I think you gave the best synopsis of what's happening here. The only thing I would actually add to it is there's a National Review article up now talking about the nexus to the President Barack Obama himself when he's communicating under an alias using an account that wasn't a .gov account to a Hillary Clinton who may have been overseas, perhaps in Russia, again on a non-secure line. Then I got to tell you, what was the motive to make sure that Hillary Clinton was never prosecuted? You got to also explore that, and that's not a wild conspiracy theory.
Congressman, in all your years in Congress, do you ever have an exoneration before investigation?
No.
Let's start there.
No. I mean, come on. There was something like 16 people that had not yet been interviewed.
17. And Hillary.
It's just unbelievable. If a judge had started writing his opinion before they heard all the testimony on this, come on. And it's John Ratcliffe under oath asking Director Comey, when did you make this decision? That's where Comey's strongest legal troubles start.
All right, Sarah, let me go back to you, because you reported on this. No, there's no there on that Russia thing. But if this can be historic, if there's impeachment, he's loathsome. F him. That's what they wrote each other.
Well, think
maybe
about
then
this,
I
Sean.
should get involved. No, wait a minute. But you got Strzok and Comey writing the exoneration. Then you got the insurance policy with Page, Strzok, and McCabe. Why are these people still working? Why have they not been fired? And what impact does it? Why did Mueller pick all of these people? And I didn't even mention Andrew Weissman yet.
That's right. And that is one of the biggest questions right now from former FBI folks who say, look, had we even done a little speck of what these folks did, we would be fired, we would be removed. What's going on here? What's going on the 7th floor? We can't get any answers from the FBI. Why would the FBI put a guy who was having an affair? This is a counterintelligence. Peter Strzok was working counterintelligence. He's having an affair. He's texting on an unsecured line, his government-issued phone, open for anyone to capture it, and then they move him to human resources. They move him from out of the special counsel and then into human resources, and we can't get an answer as to why he hasn't been fired, why Lisa Page is still working. So there's a lot of questions here, and we have to look at Deputy Director Andrew McCabe and look at everything that's come out about Andrew Weissman on the special counsel. Sean, there is a continuing investigation. This is the reason why the DOJ doesn't want this FISA memo out. This is the reason why people are so tight-lipped about this. There needs to be further investigation into this, and I agree with Chaffetz on this.
I watched today, and it's not new news that they're going to want to talk to Donald Trump. It's not even, it's old news. Right. Oh, Steve Bannon is talking. That's old news, too. Didn't these leaks, don't you suspect, as I do, this came right from Robert Mueller's office, because they are under fire, and because of all that we're discovering here, they know their time is up.
It's not unusual for a special counsel to interview the subject of the investigation, Donald Trump. Trump can't hide behind executive privilege because that only applies to protecting your communications to Congress. This is a criminal investigation. The president could be hauled in front of a grand jury. So Trump has to respond and testify. The only question is, can he limit the scope of it, which is attorneys should try to do? Because, you know, I was a defense attorney. I've yet to meet a prosecutor who cares a whit about justice and fairness. They care about convictions and indictments. They're one loss column. So this could be a perjury trap, an obstruction trap. The president needs to be careful about that, but he's a smart guy. And when he needs to be, I've read his depositions, he can be very focused and cogent.
Would you ever let the president, and I appreciate he wants to be upfront, honest, right. I would never in a million years, never, right. ever allow him to go before this witch hunt special counsel.
But he has no choice. You can't invoke executive privilege in a situation like this. It's a legitimate criminal investigation.
Don't you think there's enough legitimate reasons of a bias and an abuse within the special counsel that he has legitimate legal arguments?
Not only that, by meeting with Mueller, you are in a way legitimizing his investigation, which is illegitimate. Under the special counsel law, there has to be a stated crime. Look at the order signed by Rod Rosenstein to Mueller. There's no stated crime. It's an illegal investigation, but the president may have no choice.
Let's get your take on this. Jason Chaffetz. Congressman, I wouldn't in a million years. I would fight that up to the Supreme Court on the grounds that, number one, Mueller's team is corrupt, that it was founded. Remember, Hillary rigged the primary. Hillary paid for the phony dossier. Hillary got a pass when she committed felonies by people that even were involved in the investigation, but especially Peter Strzok. And Peter Strzok and Comey set it up using information he never should have revealed. Then the phony dossier was a predicate to get the FISA warrant against the president. I don't think there's, I believe anybody, liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, civil libertarian, you've got to be concerned about the abuse of intelligence and the misuse of our intelligence and weaponizing it against the American people.
Look, I think I would do what you suggested and not do it. But I tell you what, Donald Trump is unlike anybody I've ever seen before. And I think he wants to get out there and do that. And if you look at what Donald Trump Jr. did, he released all his emails. He gave 23 hours of testimony about a 20-minute meeting. They do things different. One last thing I got to add, Sean, though. with Strzok and Page, why do these people have security clearances? If you don't have a security clearance, guess what? You don't work at the Department of Justice in their capacity. So how can they possibly have a security clearance, take away that security clearance, and get rid of them? They should be fired. They shouldn't be working and being paid by the American taxpayers right now.
All right, Sarah Carter, we're going to give you the last word this segment.
Well, I can just tell you this. I spoke with a defense attorney who's very familiar with Andrew Weissman and Robert Mueller, and he said the president would have to be crazy to fall into their trap. This is what they do. This is what they've done in the past. They're going to try to find anything, and this is why they want to question him. So, Sean, I mean, I don't know the legalese here. Greg is the expert, but that's what I was told.
All right, last word for you, Greg Jarrett.
Yeah, I wish there was a way the president could try to avoid it. Bill Clinton tried his best not to talk to Ken Starr. He negotiated some limits on his taped interview, but in the end, he had to do it. There just is no legal basis. I mean, you can try to go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is going to knock you down. Politically, it's going to be ugly for the president. He's got to do the interview.
He's got to do the interview, but there's a precedent for restrictions. There's a precedent for what the topics are going to be.
The Bill Clinton case.
Proffer, all sorts of, okay, the lawyers, they get, in other words, these can't be open-ended, Greg. It's impossible.
Right. Limit the scope of it.
Limit the scope.
You know, and by the way, from the president's point of view, it's quite simple. I didn't talk to any Russians. I didn't collude. In terms of obstruction of justice, I'm allowed to fire people in the executive branch.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it, as always. Greg, Sarah, Congressman, thank you all for joining us. Now, the president is making major headlines tonight, declaring that there is no evidence of collusion and that he'd do that sit down under oath with the special counsel. Again, let me play this for you. We'll get reaction from Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Going to talk to Mueller? I'm looking forward to it, actually.
Do you have a date set?
Here's the story, just so you understand. There's been no collusion whatsoever. There's no obstruction whatsoever. And I'm looking forward to it. I would love to do it.
Would you in person?
You know, again, I have to say, subject to my lawyers and all of that.
Well, the key words are subject to my lawyers. Now, the president's attorney, Ty Cobb, also weighing in, telling the New York Times tonight, quote, he's ready to meet with them, but he will be guided by the advice of his personal counsel. So should the president sit down with Robert Mueller? Joining us now with more reaction to that, she's the host of Justice. She also fills in on this show. She's also a very nice person and a great lawyer. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Okay, the answer to your question is very simple. The president absolutely should not sit down. He should not agree to do it. But look, you and I both know the president. He says there is no collusion. There isn't anything.
No, I admire him wanting to do it.
But you know what? I don't believe that his lawyers have agreed that he will do it, and he said he'll be subject to the lawyers. But let me tell you why, Sean. Number one, why should he answer questions about the firing of Comey if he has a constitutional right to fire him? And number two,
shouldn't that be his answer if, in fact, he goes?
Yes, but it's never going to end. I know federal prosecutors are going to go on.
I got to stop you before you finish your point. No, this is important. So I've actually talked to my friends that are attorneys.
Right.
Okay. And they say to me, I brought this scenario up. What if I'm being interviewed by these people? He goes, you say no, and then you got to be willing to sit there.
Yep.
And I'm used to, in my life, no dead air, ever. But I will tell you, I'd be able to do that. But we know President Trump. He's going to say no, and I'll tell you why and why and why.
And he's going to go on, and he's going to talk about this, talk about that. It is a trap. There's no question. That's what the feds do. And we already know that they're biased. But the second reason is he only needs to answer questions about crimes. If it's not a crime to fire Jim Comey, then what crime are we talking about? Collusion? Russian collusion is not a crime. Ergo, he doesn't need to appear. And what they're going to do is they're going to continue to bring witnesses before the grand jury, squeeze them to try to implicate him and make him seem like a liar. It is ridiculous to go before this biased prosecutor.
It's like poor General Flynn.
Oh.
I mean, they already knew his answers because they illegally surveilled, unmasked. They didn't minimize, and then they leaked raw intelligence. He walked into a perjury trap because they knew everything he said. That's scary, by the way, in terms of unreasonable search and seizure, no warrants, and it never should have happened. The problem here is they don't like this president. Look at this team that Robert Mueller put together. Is that fair? Strzok, Weissman, their backgrounds, Weissman is a guy that withheld exculpatory evidence.
Well, he has a terrible reputation as a prosecutor. The courts know it. The Department of Justice knows it. But this is the same Department of Justice that has allowed all the things that you've talked about for the last several months. Here is the bottom line. It's our Justice Department. It's our FBI.
How do you stop it? If Mueller pushes hard, how do you stop? Executive privilege? You go to the Supreme Court? What do you do?
Well, certainly there's executive privilege. You don't have to go before them. This is more a political reason than it is a legal reason. And that's why the president is saying, sure, I'll do it.
Do you think, like I do, I don't trust Mueller based on who he's appointed and all that's gone on? I think Mueller is out for blood.
Mueller is not only out for blood, he's out to save his own butt. And I'll tell you why.
Because of all the revelations.
Because he is the person who should be investigated. Jim Comey should be investigated. All of these guys, Strzok, McCabe, why are they getting a paycheck? Why is my taxpayers' money paying for them, my dollars? These people need to be taken out in cuffs. I've said it before, Sean, this is not our Justice Department. This is a bunch of arrogant, condescending people who think they know better than we do. You've been on it the whole time. Yeah. The whole time, Sean.
And you've been on it as well. Judge, glad to see you.
Good to be seen you.
I appreciate it. All right, when we come back, the great one. Wait till you hear what the great one, Mark Levin, is saying. Fired up over this FBI and these missing texts that we now know tonight are actually being recovered as we speak. Breaking news on Hannity. Alan Dershowitz weighs in next.
The FBI sought to interfere in our election. I'm not talking about the men and women who work at the FBI. I'm talking about the top echelon. They sought to interfere with our election, and they sought to interfere in our election in worse ways than the Russians did. How is it that Barack Obama is never questioned about this? His name never comes up. Never comes up. Are you telling me that the director of the National Security Council, Susan Rice, didn't know a thing? Are you telling me that the deputy director of the National Security Council, Ben Rhodes, a well-known leaker, he didn't know a thing? Are you telling me Valerie Jarrett didn't know a thing as she sits there controlling every department and every cabinet secretary? Are you telling me that James Comey, who likes to meet with presidents and takes memos, that he didn't meet with the president or write any memos? It's nice to see now that we have committees of Congress who are concerned about this. It's nice to see now that we have radio hosts who are concerned about this. It's nice to see that we now have television hosts who are concerned about this. Where the hell were they in March? Mark, what are you talking about? Where were they in March? When I had information, pulled it together from the public accounts, and began to pull the string and to see that something didn't smell right, something didn't look right. And the media came down on me like a ton of bricks.
And Mark was on this show at that time, and Sarah Carter and John Solomon in March. They broke the story about FISA abuse and a warrant at Trump Tower. Here with reaction, the author of the bestseller, Trumped Up, How Criminalization of Political Differences Endangers Democracy, Harvard constitutional law professor, Alan Dershowitz. Sir, good to see you again. I saw your comments that you fear that they're going to try and go after obstruction of justice. This was supposed to be about collusion. Explain your fear.
Well, my worry is that a constitutional crisis could be started if Mueller starts probing the president's motives as to why he exercised his constitutional authority to fire Comey, why he exercised his constitutional authority in telling Comey, if he did, to go easy on Flynn. Those are actions that are definitely provided for in Article 2 of the Constitution. And prosecutors simply do not have authority to probe the motives and try to get into the brain of the president any more than when President Bush pardoned Caspar Weinberger to prevent himself from being targeted. Nobody thought to probe his mind or the workings of his mind. And so I think one possibility is for the president to say, look, I'll answer questions about criminal conduct, alleged criminal conduct, but I won't answer questions about my motives in exercising my constitutional authority. And if you press me on that, we'll take that issue up to the United States Supreme Court. We'll get that resolved before anybody can be charged with anything relating to obstruction of justice for exercising constitutional rights.
In this environment, Professor, why would the president ever go before Comey? I'm sorry, before Mueller, knowing about Comey and Strzok and Page? And what would you do if you were his attorney?
Well, first, he really has no choice. The special counsel can subpoena him to go in front of the grand jury. He can refuse to answer specific questions based on privilege or specific areas based on his constitutional authority. But in general, every American citizen has to comply with a subpoena to go in front of the grand jury. And so he will have to probably compromise and work out a deal with time limits, with his lawyer present, and with limits on the scope of the questioning. Now, they won't agree on obstruction of justice. Mueller will insist on asking him questions, and his lawyers might very well say, no, that's out of bounds. It will create a constitutional violation of checks and balances and separation of powers for anyone to question the president's actions under Article 2 of the Constitution. As long as they were lawful actions under the Constitution, nobody has the authority to question the president's motives.
All right, so you have, I'm sure, look, you're a well-known criminal defense attorney, Harvard law professor. Have you ever heard, A, of an FBI director and an investigator writing exoneration draft after draft months before they interview the key people involved? B, when a phony dossier paid for by one candidate is used not only to lie to the American people, that's separate and apart, but then used as the basis for a FISA warrant, isn't there a strong argument here this never should have happened?
Yes, and I think every civil libertarian should be concerned about the abuses of the FBI. Look, I've been writing about the FBI since J. Edgar Hoover was the director, and civil libertarians, whether they are conservatives or liberals, ought to be concerned about the potential abuses of intelligence, which is why I called for an independent commission, a bipartisan commission, not a political inquiry, to inquire into whether there was influence in the election by Russia, influence in the election by the FBI or anyone else, because you're not going to get it when you have partisan disputes by members of Congress or a special counsel whose only proper job is to investigate.
But have you ever seen it this bad? I mean, to use one candidate, a phony dossier they paid for, to be the premise of a FISA warrant against an opposition candidate, and then an incoming president, and then the FBI director is literally exonerating. So this, and I believe there were crimes committed, you know, mishandling of classified information, destruction of classified information. You know, I don't know many people that acid wash their hard drives and beat the crap out of their mobile devices, Professor. So I think there was a strong case there, but they exonerated her before they investigated. Whether you, it doesn't matter.
As you know,
but
I'm strongly
I know where you stand. But my question here is, there has to be a basis here that this was formulated on false information from the get-go.
Look, there are two issues. I agree with you completely that if the FISA warrant was based on a questionable and possibly false series of documents, that under Supreme Court doctrine can be challenged. The issue about whether or not you exonerate before an investigation depends on whether there is a crime charged. If there's no crime, of course you exonerate. But if you're looking for evidence, then you have to have a full investigation.
All right. Thank you, Professor. When we come back, Ed Henry, live report on the president's fight against sanctuary cities and much more. Straight ahead. Big news tonight on President Trump's fight against illegal immigration. Live from the White House with all the details, Fox News chief national correspondent, our own Ed Henry. Ed, you're there alone tonight. The president's on an airplane.
That's right, Sean. He's heading over to Davos. But before he left, what he did was step up his crackdown on illegal immigration. Congress may be stalled on what they call comprehensive immigration reform, but he still has his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, moving forward. He sent an aggressive letter today to 23 municipalities and cities that are operating as sanctuary cities, demanding to know why they're not following federal guidelines. This warning sent to some of the worst offenders, including New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who were told they will start being hit personally with fines and legal actions if they don't comply. Emanuel was defiant, declaring, quote, the Trump Justice Department can try to intimidate us with legal threats, but we will never abandon our values as a welcoming city or the rights of Chicago residents. Now, de Blasio was among several mayors who then formally boycotted a White House event today, leading the president to insist the focus should be on keeping the public safe.
Sanctuary cities are the best friend of gangs and cartels. like MS-13. Death rate around sanctuary cities in and around for innocent Americans is unacceptable. Take a look at what happened in San Francisco and Kate Steinle. My administration is committed to protecting innocent Americans, and the mayors who choose to boycott this event have put the needs of criminal illegal immigrants over law-abiding Americans.
Now, that came after the president lashed out at Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer for backpedaling on funding for the wall. The president tweeting, quote, "Crying Chuck fully understands, especially after his humiliating defeat, that if there's no wall, there's no DACA or protection for dreamers. We must have safety, security, together with a strong military for our great people." Now, Schumer tweeted back, quote, "The clock is ticking for dreamers. If we don't solve this problem in 15 days, the Republicans are going to have to explain to dreamers what their plan is to prevent them from being deported." But White House aides think Schumer is just talking tough because he's under pressure from the left after what happened on the government shutdown. And in fact, administration officials tell me they believe the bipartisan DACA deal that Schumer, Durbin, and others have been pushing is dead on arrival. And so the president is going to jump into the fray, laying out his own legislative framework on immigration, particularly tougher provisions on cracking down on illegals. That's going to come out next Monday, Sean.
All right, Ed Henry at the White House holding down the fort for the president tonight. He's going to be living in that house tonight. Kidding. All right, joining us now, nationally syndicated radio talk show host with the Salem Radio Network, Larry Elder, Fox News correspondent at large, Geraldo Rivera. Welcome back, Geraldo. I know you had a recent medical procedure. You look great. Thanks for the picture.
Thanks. You make it sound like I had plastic surgery.
You did. You had a little thing on your back fixed. And he sends me a picture. See, my staples are out. I'm like, gee, thanks, Geraldo.
Yeah. That's how close we are, my brother.
I know how passionate you are on immigration, but you would accept the deal, build the wall, fully fund it, and chain migration, merit-based immigration, if you got DACA, right? Why did Chuck Schumer act like a big baby after he got rolled on the Schumer shutdown?
In broad strokes, you're absolutely right to recite what I believe is a reasonable compromise on the issue of immigration reform. We can't, by concentrating on sanctuary cities, snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. We have an opportunity now. President Donald Trump has a historic opportunity. He got Chuck Schumer and fiery left-wing congresspeople like Luis Gutierrez to say, yes, we will fund the southern border wall that was the central issue in Trump's campaign. We will fund the border wall. You get the border wall if you give us humanity for the 750,000 dreamers.
But here's the thing. Democrats don't want the wall. They don't want DACA. They want to run on DACA. Isn't that the truth, Larry Elder?
That is the truth. They don't want the wall. The reason they don't want the wall is because Democrats have lost the white vote since 1964. Unless they can use some sort of Jedi mind trick to convince white people to agree to have their taxes raised and have government expanded, they need to bring in voters that share that philosophy. That means voters from third world countries. They want the borders to remain porous because these illegal aliens turned citizens would likely vote for the Democratic Party 2-1. So this is their way of getting a governing majority.
All this nonsense about race? Larry, is this about race? How did this suddenly become about race?
It's about votes.
700,000 merit-based immigrants in the grand tradition of this country. This is a wonderful opportunity for this president. I've known him for 40 years to do something that I know he wants to do, have compassion for these kids. And he'll give the wall. You'll get the wall. But start talking about people of color and this color and that color.
Geraldo, a mind experiment, please, my friend. Ask yourself whether or not Luis Gutierrez and Harry Reid would have exactly the same position on border wall and on border security if 80% of illegals turned citizens would likely vote Republican. I dare say we'd probably have a very different conversation.
I know that you're an acolyte of Ronald Reagan.
The walls would be secured
Larry, you
yesterday.
believe in Ronald Reagan.
The walls would be secured
Ronald
yesterday.
Reagan understood that Latinos particularly are instinctively entrepreneurial. They're capitalists. They could be Republicans. Look, Donald Trump ticked up despite the worst press of any candidate ever in terms of the Hispanic vote.
May I say something?
Treat them with kindness and respect.
I'm happy.
Look, we just deported Jorge Garcia,
may I say something,
a 39-year-old guy who came here at age 10. I mean, are we going to have 700,000 incidents of Jorge Garcia's being deported as his citizen children cry and clutch his leg? Come on, let's make a deal here, Larry.
Geraldo,
Let's make a deal.
Happy. I'm happy you mentioned Ronald Reagan, because Ronald Reagan in 1986 got rolled. He was promised two things. He was promised border security and that employers who knowingly hired illegal aliens would be heavily sanctioned, neither of which was done. Republicans are